We're going to take the seats, please. We need to start this, our finance committee, committee of the whole.
Barbara's the best.
Let's call this to order.
Thank you for your work.
Let's go on the table and identify ourselves to the record. Mike, we'll start with you and work our way around. Or Al, go ahead.
Al Tamani, Budget Advisory Commission.
Mike Chadwick, Internal Audit.
Lance Wilbur, Office of Management and Budget.
Dan Moore, Treasury.
Pete Peterson, Assembly.
Dick Training Assembly.
Tim Steele, Assembly.
Eric Croft, Assembly.
Christopher Constant, Assembly.
Alden Thurm, Deputy City Manager.
Robert Harris, CFO.
Thank you. Well, we've only got an hour for this, and we have lots of things to discuss. MOA financial status, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The municipality is in great financial shape, and I say that fine, great, whichever kind of phrase you want to use. We are a AAA rated
Unlike the state.
entity from S&P and AA plus from Fitch, and I sort of want to just put assurances out there that that we expect we'll maintain those ratings. I know you probably saw some news stories about the state of Alaska being downgraded. In part, the rating agencies were concerned that the state lacked a fiscal plan, and I'm happy to say that the municipality of Anchorage has a fiscal plan. We're required to have a balanced budget, and so as we sort of listen to today's presentation, you'll hear that revenues might be up, might be down, and you'll hear some conversations from Mr. Wilbur about the fact that if revenues move one direction or the other, we have the ability to pull back the throttle a little bit on some of our expenditures to be able to make sure that at the end of the year we have a balanced budget. So we're in good financial shape, and I expect we'll maintain that.
Mr. Harris, does the state's downturn in their rating going to affect us?
Yes.
In other words, the rating agencies can look at us and say we're a subset of the state, so they look at downgrading us, so they take us as an entity standing by ourselves.
I don't want to. Certainly, I don't want to speak for the rating agencies.
Well, go ahead.
What we found 2 years ago was that there was S&P said we've downgraded the state, and we think that might affect Anchorage as well. So we had a series of conversations with S&P and with Fitch about the fact that Anchorage gets such a small portion of its revenue from the state. State and federal government revenues account for less than 2.5–3% of our total income. And so this S&P, after looking at that, decided, in fact, that the rating of the state should not impact our rating. Again, I don't want to speak for the rating agencies, but I think we're in good, solid footing. We have to have a balanced fiscal plan, and we do.
Yeah. Let the minutes reflect that Mr. Dyson's here and Mr. Rivera's here also. Question from Assembly members. Anything for Mr. Harris? Well, you're quick and easy and done. And Mr. Wilson's joining us, and Ms. LaFrance is joining us. Mr. Steele.
Yeah, I just want to thank Mr. Harris for his work. He's doing a good job on here, and hopefully the quality of our budgeting process will help the state a little bit. That would be nice.
Thank you. John, any
Bring them
question,
up a
Mr.
little
Harris? Any question, Mr. Harris? Mr. France, anything for him?
To let it go. Thank you.
We'll move on.
Moving right along.
Mr. Wilbur, sir.
Well, before we get to me, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I think if Mr. Moore, the municipal treasurer, might have some thoughts about
Okay.
revenues that
Mr. Moore?
actually lead into my conversation.
I'm sorry we didn't have you in here.
Is this good news or bad news?
What would you like?
Good news only.
news.
Okay, all right. Good news. So there is actually some pretty good news here. Overall, for the city, and this includes Fund 181, it also includes unrealized gain or loss on investment.
Why don't you tell everybody what Fund 181 is?
Fund 181 is the Development Services Department. They are an autonomous fund, a very high volume activity area, and they are part of the 100 funds technically, but really they operate to sort of cover their own expenses. So anyway, if you take all that into account, all general government departments, Fund 181, which is Development Services, and unrealized gains at this point on cash flow investments, the bottom line is that we are under, we're under our revenue budget, missing revenue budget by just $1 million. That is a revenue budget of $700 million. Okay, so if you do the calculation, we are just missing budget by 0.14%. Last year, it was a tough year for lots of reasons, and we were missing the revenue budget by, I think, just a little over a full percent. So this is a much improved projection that's occurring right now. I will summarize a few of the main things that are changing or that we monitor very closely. Room tax is down about $400,000. It does get, I think it's between what the budget is budgeted at and what we're actually seeing, there's some need for adjustment, and we will inform OMB about that when they prepare 2018. But in general, it looks like for this year, tourism and room tax will be up about 4%, which is good. That's a positive. But when you compare that to what was budgeted, we're actually going to miss budget by about $400,000. So that's one area. Tobacco tax, we expect to still be right at budget. So we don't see any major move there at the current time. Property taxes, which is the biggest type of tax that we have, that includes both real property and personal property. Real property is up, not a lot, but it's up maybe $1 million. Personal property is down about 3.4%, which is about $800,000. So the net effect of that is only $300,000. That is as close as you get with property taxes to only be $300,000 off of your budget. So that was good. MISA, there's some adjustments there that I think came through the Assembly recently. That actually created a little bit of a positive variance. Marijuana tax, we continue to project that it will come in at about $1.4 or $1.6 million is our projection. The budget was set at $3 million. I will say, and we're going to provide you the report on August 8th, so it's coming to you soon. We do meet with the Mayor's Exec Group later today. So what I'm telling you today, the Mayor's Exec Group hasn't even seen yet, but we are. So this is very fresh. But I was going to tell you on the marijuana tax, just to put it in some perspective. It was a very late start. It was late December last year that it started to, the industry started. We saw, and I'll just share these percentage growth factors and kind of see what I'm talking about. In January, the growth of the revenues was 11%. In February, it was 68%. Then it was 54%. But then by April, it's 22%. By May, it's 10%. So there was a steep climb, and there's still growth, but it's not nearly what it was earlier. The price itself, which is another major component of the revenue, is actually staying pretty steady. $20 per gram is what the current price is. So at the retail level.
What's the volume? Do you have?
I don't have the volume with me on this. I don't. We can get that for you if you need it, but yeah. Okay, so those are some of the major ones. Cash flow investments, that is right now projected to be somewhere around $200,000 to $300,000 under budget. So there is some volatility with the market, and we hit kind of a low point in terms of our cash position in April and May. But now that the property tax money has come in, the rates were set up higher in mid-June. Hopefully some of that will start turning more positive. But we're not off that much. $200,000 to $300,000 isn't a lot. And that does build in the unrealized gain that's currently out there. And let's see what else I had. The only other thing I was going to mention is there was a special project that the mayor wanted Treasury, which is my area, to work on this year. And it was to really try to address delinquent fines, especially traffic fines and criminal fines that are out there. And over the last 10 years, we've collected $50 million. I mean, a lot of money. But there's still tens of millions that are unpaid, and a lot of it are the high flyer types that, kind of never going to pay anything. But basically what we did is we said, okay, we're going to take every single delinquent traffic fine we have and try to send the people a letter. Same thing with criminal fines. So we sent out, we're only maybe halfway through, but we've already sent out 20,000 traffic letters, and we sent out almost 40,000 criminal fine letters. And these are not unique individuals. Most people owe 2, 3, 4 fines each. So there's a large volume here, and we're seeing what the result of that is. The budget that was set was $1.2 million, which is a very large amount of money. That's a one-time sort of revenue recovery. Right now, our best projection is we're going to make about a little over little less than $600,000. So it's still, we're going to make a good chunk of money, but we're not going to make the 1.2 million. And that 1.2 million is really kind of a one-time effort to really try to do our best to just squeeze out as much as we can. One good thing from this is in our new revised letter, we are getting a better response than in the past, and we put in there, need help paying, ? And we give them a phone number, and if they need help paying, because some of these are pretty expensive, they can call us, and we get them set up on a payment plan.
Yeah.
So that is a nice service that we can provide, and it encourages payment. And we've seen hundreds of debtors that have signed up for that. So that's a good sign.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Yes, sir.
And
Should I
that's
say-
all I've got for my summary. Yes.
are you able to go after the permanent fund dividend?
Oh, absolutely, every year. Yep.
Yep. And I believe under state law, you can recover your recovery costs from the PERC.
We can recover the fine itself. We can't add on to that anything else other than there's a flat fee that the Permanent Fund Office puts on for processing. But it's just the original fine is what we can try to attach. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Other questions for Mr. Moore from Assembly members?
Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Lance?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we start on the update of the 2018, I kind of like to tell the Assembly how we're doing on 2017. At your August 8th meeting, you will get our our second quarterly report, which will include all general government and the utilities. But for general government right now, as we're working on it, we're halfway through the year. We're about 45% spent, so we're underspending in total in labor and non-labor as of the end of June. Our labor budget is based almost right on at 50%. Our non-labor is significantly less. You'll also see when you look at that report that our overtime is very high. A lot of our overtime is related to SAP. And so you'll identify which departments have those overtime budgets in there. So again, you'll see that report and we'll submit that for your August 8th meeting. But knowing the information and knowing how our revenues are doing and knowing how 18 is going to look, I think it's very good and commendable to the departments that they are managing their spend. And in addition to how they're performing, on June 30th, I sent them a letter and sort of initiating the 2018 budget process. And the reason that we did it then is we wanted to get departments to start thinking early about 2018. We're basically 4 to 6 weeks ahead of schedule when we did this last year. So this, in the message that I sent to the department heads, is an anticipation of developing the 18 budget, which we will prepare and deliver to the Assembly in your first week of October. So the basic schedule is that letter went out, department submissions are due the end of the month, and then the mayor and the executive team will look at those submissions. We will then basically run our overhead to all of those things, prepare our budget, present those. I know we'll have some conversations and work sessions with the Assembly, and then when you get the budget on October 2nd, then we'll start our discussions for public hearing. Our current schedule is that we would do an adoption of the 2018 budget the third week of November. So in preparing for that schedule, we really wanted departments and the administration and to make the Assembly aware that we're thinking ahead and planning ahead, because I want to make sure that the departments are preparing some choices for the administration, and our projection is that we'll probably, based on the information that we had in June, we've got about a $20 million gap from 17 to 18. So with that, we wanted to ask the departments to prepare some scenarios for the administration to figure out how we can build a balanced budget with knowing that at least that gap. As the revenue forecasts come in, as Dan mentioned, we're going to meet later today, and those will be looking at how we're doing in 17. In early August, we'll be meeting with Treasury to formulate how 18 is going to look. So we'll bring in those revenue forecasts. We'll complement that with the recommendations or suggestions from the departments, and then we'll keep an eye on both of those things so that when we prepare the budget, if we have additional revenues or revenues that are not performing the way that we expected, then we can modify our expenses and prepare our budget to you. The administration is really focused on making sure that the budget that we present to you is focused on our public safety needs, our homeless needs, and what we're doing to basically create jobs and help the economy. So departments know that. So their submissions need to make sure that they are looking at those three key areas when we present that to the administration. So that is where we are on the budget itself. We're very early in the process. That letter that I sent out is helping departments formulate their numbers, their positions, their services. That stuff's not due to us for another couple weeks, and then once that information is compiled, OMB will then compile that information and start sharing that with the executive team and the administration, and then we'll start sharing and preparing that information to share with the Budget Advisory Commission, with Mr. Tamani and that team, and with the Assembly. So that's where we are on 2018. We do have some significant challenges ahead of us. There's no doubt, but I have the confidence in the departments that they're going to give us their best recommendation. But I have talked to many of them, and it's difficult. I mean, they've been doing this for 9 years, and so it's very hard for them to recognize how we're going to be proposing reductions in service. The
Because
days
of the staff, too.
making
I've talked to some of the
efficiencies.
people.
These choices are going to be difficult. Look forward to seeing what they have. We've also encouraged them to propose revenues. I mean, if they have some revenue choices, if they are seeing some opportunity where new revenues might be coming up, or grant revenue might be coming up for a one-time expense, we'll entertain those. If they are one-time monies for ongoing expenses, we're going to challenge those. It's kind of the position that we are in. Again, early in the stages, so I'll address as many questions as I can.
Well, I've got some questions for you. I'll start the list. Question first, Lance. I looked at your letter. It said 10% reduction for departments, but 5% reduction for first responders.
Right.
I equate that to police and fire. So how much money are we talking about? Not percentage. How much money are we talking about?
So
Asking police and fire not to spend.
Right. So 5%, basically 5% of their manageable budget, because we take out, if they have a bond debt, we take that out. That's not, we move that. If they have a service area cost, then we take that out. It's roughly between 4 and 4.5, maybe 5 million for each.
I would ask you, when you bring it to us, I'd like to know what that equates to as far as what they're not doing.
And that is exactly,
It's $4 to $5 million.
that's exactly the request that I've asked for all departments. When they tell me the submissions, I want 2 pieces of information. I want to know what they are going to do with the budget that they have. What services are they going to continue to provide? And I also want to know what services would be in jeopardy if we didn't support those. So it's not all about what we're not going to do. It's also important to know what we are going to do.
Okay, I've got
That's
some questions
important
for you.
to
Mr.
shut
Steele first.
Yeah, that was kind of my question until you answered it generally. I was concerned was the $20 million a revenue problem or an expenditure problem? And it seems to me it's a combination of the two from what you said, and we attack it from both sides.
And right now, it's an estimate that that was the estimate that we had in basically the middle of June. And as I work with the CFO and the treasurer and the departments, that number will move around until we get to a budget to you in October.
Mr. Peterson, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so the $20 million gap, if I'm figuring correct, is somewhere in the vicinity of 4%. And so we're asking for departments to reduce their budget by 5 and 10%. So are we projecting additional downturn in revenues for next year as well?
No, because part of our total budget is based on what other resources, as the CFO mentioned. Not all of our revenue sources out of our total budget come from property taxes. We get revenues from other places. So if we ask a department to reduce by 10%, and their reduction is by, in effect, reducing the amount of revenues that we receive that were non-property taxes, that doesn't help us solve our problem.
I see.
So that's why that number.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Dyson, sir.
Yeah, Lance, you hit on something really key. Back in the day, the budget used to be produced with the concept of service levels. And so if we, the decision makers, if we were going to cut 5 5% from street maintenance, we could say that would add 7 hours to get the snow all cleared.
That's correct.
We turned the street lights on 2 hours, you know, it was really helped the decision process and tied something of the real impact to it.
Right.
Are your departments thinking about what work might be downloaded to volunteers?
I think that could be applicable in some departments,
Yeah.
but there's probably 6 or 7 that could do that, but, and I expect the department heads are being creative. They're being creative, and volunteers may be part of the solution, but it
Sure, and
depends on
they'll
the
get into
department.
some labor contract issues as well, I suspect.
You would.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions from Assembly members? Just to let you guys know, that's going to affect the Assembly department too. And that means our clerk, our legal department, our ombudsman, internal audit, us with our aides. This budget cutback is going to affect every department, including the Assembly department. So let you know where we're heading on it. Thank you, Lance.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I hate
Appreciate it.
those bodies.
Okay, you're not Shirley Nelson, Al, but you know, one of these days we'll actually get your name on here.
Well, I'm not good looking, but I'm clean. Anyway, the Budget Advisory Commission is going to be addressing some elements at our next meeting here next month. And we're going to be forming some subcommittees. One to take a look and make recommendations on the gas tax, which we have had some information off of Lance. We're going to take a look and have a committee take a look at the total cumulative funding indebtedness of the city. We're going to take a look at tax revenue, property tax revenue, as to perhaps make some adjustments, you know, on the payment schedule. And then we have a committee that's going to be working on perhaps the fire department, getting some information, you know, from them, maybe making recommendations. And those will probably be accumulated within the next 3 months. But the gas tax will probably be coming to you in August. The other item we're going to be discussing at our August meeting is for all of the departments. We're going to ask for a copy of their original mission statement and what's their current mission statement. And the reason for that is that here's what originally that you were supposed to do, and here's what you are doing now. Because as those things change, many times those increase, you know, your costs. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Any questions from Assembly members for him? This is an advisory commission to us. So if there's some area you want them to look into, look to finance, please ask Al. He's chairman of the Budget Advisory Commission. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A general question, actually, about that commission. You had mentioned subcommittees. How are those positions staffed, and do you have enough, I'm assuming, from interested public members of the public?
Well, we have 11 members of the board. I think it's 10 or 11.
Mm-hmm.
So we utilize those people, and they work with Lance and his staff to gather the information. As far as public input, when those things come up to you, that's your time to have the public input.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, Fred.
Yeah, I think it's commendable if you're looking at mission statements and whether there's been an increase in mission scope, rightly or wrongly. And some of it has to, well, my experience is that the organizations do what they need to do, and when technology responsibilities change, they go ahead and do it, and rarely go back and update the mission statement. And it's something that ought to ought to be done periodically. And I think it would be wise if you would identify those mission statements. Either the activity ought to go back to fitting the mission statement, or the mission statement needs to be updated. I think that's a helpful thing to do. And I don't know if we have a part in that or not, but
It'll be coming up to you.
yeah. Are those in, somebody tell me, are those in statute? In the municipal ordinance, the mission statements?
They're in the budget
They're in the budget.
for each department. Each department's mission is in the budget.
Yeah.
So you can,
Go ahead.
you can scratch out certain segments of a mission if it's no longer necessary.
And maybe add the ones that
Or
we
maybe
never
add the
knew
ones
about
that they've been
before.
doing and haven't been getting credit for. Lance?
Just a couple comments for Al's commission. They're open to the public. We meet in this room. It's the first Thursday of every month. So anyway, they're open to the public, so if there's an opportunity for, as a discussion matters come up, people are welcome to attend. We also get representatives from the school district there, so Budget Advisory Commission also advises not only on the general government budget, but the school district budget. So I think Al's going to be a great chair. He's just, we're working very well together, get a work program so we can prioritize the work they want to do and give them the information they want.
During a report of what we do is we put the budget together. Administration brings it to us. We take input on the Budget Advisory Commission. We need input from all different areas, and that's some of what we do. Lance, yesterday we got a document that said the city wants to buy a building, or lease a building for homeless downtown on 8th, I think it is.
Okay.
My question is, I know you said that one of the mayor's priorities is homelessness. I want to know what the cost of this is, given the fact we're looking at a $20 million deficit, potentially. I want to know how much money we're talking about for this. And the city looking at buying it, the city's looking at leasing it from the company. I want to make sure the tax dollars we get don't evaporate from that.
I'll look into it.
If you would, please.
Just a quick note, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead,
The building
Chris.
is vacant because the state pulled back funding the program there, just FYI. It's already
That's
vacant.
fine,
Doesn't
but
hurt
there's
that.
going to be a cost associated with it.
Absolutely right.
I want to know what the cost is and how we're going to pay for it.
Loss on top of loss.
And upgrades.
Yes, Steve?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So if it was a state building, they may not have been paying property taxes before, or did they own the building, or were they renting the building?
We're
or
leasing it.
Leasing it?
It's owned by Geo Corporation. They were granted services there for the state, lost the funding for the services, so they have an empty building.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Once you get a chance, look into see what's a tax building or what.
I will do that.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, we move on. The next one is, I don't know, Alden.
Thank you.
81.5 million. It's not going up, is it, Alden?
Not yet.
You've got plenty of money and everything's solved and therefore,
Boy, you
Rosy
guys
projection.
out of the guns, don't you? Thanks, Chairman Train. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity on the work session last Friday to try to answer any questions you may have of the upcoming memos that are going to be hitting the Assembly on this coming Tuesday's meeting. As I mentioned during that particular meeting, we were able to start our last system integration testing last Monday. It's a 4-week session, and we're finishing up tomorrow. We'll be halfway through. So we have a short session to try to do a lot of work. We also have completed the move over from Sunshine Building into this building. If you wanted to stop on your way out to your old digs down on 155, there's a lot of people in there working. I did want to say that the municipal staff at this point in time are almost working 7 days a week, 12 to 15-hour days to try to hit our deadline here that we have for a decision, which we're looking forward towards the 11th of August to hopefully make the decision that we're going to shoot for October 2nd. So we're right in the middle of our testing at this particular point in time. They're working very hard. The consultants on the SAP and Peloton side are also working through a lot of efforts as we're going through here to really try to hit our things. I do hand this out. I was requested several years ago. You wanted transparency to where we're at and what's going on in the process. So I'm only going to refer to you to a couple of pages in here that I believe are important for your representation of where we're at. I'm going to start on page 4. Our finance and logistics, which is our purchasing area, has been a struggle for us throughout this process. You will see that anytime the light blue line is above the dark blue line, that's a good thing for us. So on page 4, it shows that to date, we are actually ahead of schedule on our test cases that are supposed to be done during this time period. If you remember in SID 2, we never even got to a majority of them. So we're really off to a good start. We've also focused our efforts specifically on purchasing our SRM area and have staffed that up because that's been a troubled area. And those efforts have been rewarded with some very good start to the SID 3 testing that we're off to here. So much so that if you turn to page 5, we actually in the first week and a half on the light blue line there have almost accomplished as many test case scenarios, which are our full end-to-end processes that we did the entire 12-week time period last time in the first week and a half. So our finance and logistics area is off to a very good start, but it's taking a tremendous effort on the municipality and the consulting staff to be able to do this, and we're going to have to demand that or ask the employees of that effort all the way through for the next 3 weeks to be able to meet our goals. But currently, we're either tracking or slightly below, but we are exceedingly higher than we were at this point in the second round, so that's good to see. The other thing, if you go to page 7, on our HR and payroll side, we had a very good SID 2, and you're going to be seeing that on page 7 and 8 as well, that they're off to an expected good start and are ahead of schedule pretty much across the board on where they were expected to be at so far in. So we continue to put a lot of pressure on them to, especially on the payroll side, to ensure that we're ready to go on that particular modules when we make the decision to go live. So basically, from a testing perspective, we're off to a very good start, but we have a lot of people really dedicated to this process to try to hit our deadlines. With anything, the next many pages there are our defects. That's why we do integration testing right now, and I'm not going to go into the detail, but just know that we manage those on a daily basis with the consultants and the developers fixing the defects as they come up, and then that turns back around to our municipal staffs to retest those particular areas as fast as possible to make sure those fixes have been corrected and we're allowed to continue to move forward. So we have a lot of little detailed pages to be able to do that.
Can I get a definition?
Go ahead.
Just reading these, you have the phrase business scenario. What is a business scenario?
Okay, so we have two terminologies there. One, we have a business scenario which is made up of multiple scripts. So we talk about scripts and we talk about scenarios. So a script is an individual test on a specific component of whatever that system is that you're looking for. You link those from end to end in a complete process from beginning to end. That's called a scenario. So a scenario, we probably have 50 to 60 scenarios made up of, in HCM, 1,400 scripts that make up those individual tasks. So it's the step-by-step process as you go through, let's say, a hire to retire or a hiring of an employee. How do you hire them? How do they do their benefits? How do they get set up in payroll? How do they get set up in their unions? All that kind of stuff. Those are the individual scripts, and that's when it says test cases. That's a script. And then a scenario is the end-to-end, which could anywhere be from 4 scripts, but some of our larger ones are over 100 scripts that have to be run individually through there. But what we're trying to identify is as we talked about, system integration testing is how do all the different modules in the different departments work end to end. You don't just want payroll to be able to pay if you can't post it to the journal entries. So system integration testing is doing it from beginning to end. So every one of those scenarios is a beginning to an end of a specific process that we go through. So, but we're looking for success in all of those. You don't actually have a scenario that can be tested and validated unless every script was run and there are no defects. That's the only way you can get a scenario to actually be increased on the particular metrics that we're looking at. So if you had 80 scenarios and 1 defect in every one of them, you would have no scenarios that would be validated. You have, in order for a scenario to be validated, every individual component has to be there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dyson, sir.
I've never seen this phrase, high detail burn down. What does that mean?
So I think you are on page 10.
I'll read page 9.
Page 9. So the defects are categorized into 4 different levels. Level 1 and 2s are high and critical, and those are the ones we absolutely have to have done to be able to make sure that whatever that process is. And then the level 3s and 4s are medium and lows. This particular one right here is looking at the critical and high, and the detail burn down, what we're looking at is the defect was discovered by most likely either a consultant or a subject matter expert for the municipality, and a defect was raised, and this is our tracking mechanism to know where that defect resides. Is it in development? Is it being retested? Is it fixed? And so forth. So the burn down, they're trying to burn those number of defects down. So that's the terminology that they're using. Fixing them basically.
Fixing is equated with
Burn down, that is correct.
That's interesting.
Guys, anything else, sir? Anything else, Fred?
No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alden?
So, a lot of detail here, but like I said, I mentioned earlier, transparency is what we're always trying to provide. The rest of the details there basically just break down the different areas of the system and who's working on them. The last pages that I want to talk about are pages 18 and 19, because I know that Zig will be up here next week, and he always talks about these areas. We had 29 deferred reports, and we were delayed in getting those into development. However, we do manage those, and as you can see, we've actually been able, by the green is the easiest way to determine, we've actually been able to develop some of those reports, and actually may even have an opportunity of bringing some of those into the integration testing, which I several weeks ago never thought was going to be a possibility. So they're actually making some progress. I can assure you that some of these will not be tested, but we are certainly attempting to make sure that they're developed and ready to be tested after the October 2nd targeted go live that we have. But this is a report that we don't lose sight of those documents. And the same thing with the next one. I know he always talks about the CAFR reports. So those are currently being worked on. And as you can see, are at different stages of development. They are not critical to go live. These are the reports that would be needed for the 2018 usage, but we do use this report to make sure that progress is being made by SAP, and that this does not get left. I know he talked about several areas of the system, maybe either de-scoping or deferring, and what we're using these reports to show is that we are, while we are still aggressively developing and doing our testing, we are also making sure that some of these areas that we're either going to be deferred, we are working on, and we have a visibility on where that work is going to be done and when it's going to be delivered to the municipality of Anchorage. As I would say, mentioned earlier, I always try to do, these people are working extremely hard, and if you get a chance to certainly pop your head now that we're in this building, in your old 155 is a large group of people, stop in by all means and so forth, but they are working very hard, and there's a lot of work still to go on this. If we are successful with getting the majority of our issues dealt with here in our testing, we will then look to move into the cutover during the 7-week time period to target our October 2nd deadline. So we're going towards that effort. We're working very hard towards that. Data is always a big issue for us, and getting that data that we have in the right format. It's caused even a little bit of the results from what we've experienced right now, even though they're positive, they've held us back a little bit. So we are challenged with having a lot of work to be done by the limited workforce that we have. But I can tell you, to a person, they're dedicated and doing everything they possibly can for the municipality of Anchorage to hit these deadlines.
Are we out of the Sunshine Mall now completely?
The last 2 people will be moved tomorrow, and the furniture will hopefully be disposed of throughout the rest of the municipality on Monday next week, and the lease is up on the 31st. I always like to be early, so but we're all but the 2 admin assistants have left that building. They're now located in different floors of this building here.
What's the burn rate this week? Do we know?
We have people, the municipal burn rate or the burn rate for the consultants?
Consultants.
We're probably still in that 400 to 450,000 rate. We have The number of consultants is less now, specifically on the developers, because the vast majority of the development has rolled off. The testing, which is the next big chunk, in about 3 weeks, about 15 to 16 more people will roll off at that point in time, and then it'll continue to go down. But we're still burning, and mainly that some of those numbers are up, as I mentioned, because many of them are putting in way more than 40 hours a week right now. We're pushing. We're pushing like crazy across the board, and just like the Muni staff, they're putting in a tremendous number of hours, and I think was mentioned in the financials here. A lot of that overtime is being done to the SAP project, and the SAP project costing, and the capital dollars are paying for that overtime. So we've been averaging about $250,000 a month on Muni labor.
Okay. Tim?
Yeah, I'm worried about burnout and loss of employees, turnover, and all those things. Are we keeping folks? Are they happy? I mean, overtime might help, but
They're actually having a
how we
big pizza.
doing?
They're having a pizza thing right now down there. So we are trying to feed them, certainly. The big push is going to be obviously the next 3 weeks, and for most of them, they've been doing it for 6 years. So a 3-week time period doesn't seem to be too challenging. It is unfortunate it's July and people would like to be off. I haven't seen as much drop off recently for Muni employees. We've tried to give them a little bit of vacation where we could, but I think at this point they're just running on adrenaline and trying to get this done. We have seen, unfortunately, some of the consultants, as I've mentioned, as we get closer to the end, some of them starting to fall off as well. So I am struggling to deal with trying to find backfills for them, and when we're so close to the end and some critical components. So that's been a little bit more challenging than the Muni side.
Loss of corporate knowledge is not.
But once we get through testing and defect, then they're going to focus 100% on cutover and data. So while it'll be very time consuming, it'll be one focused effort. Right now, they're spread across training and development. And the regular job still, it's a yeoman's effort that they're going through, specifically the Philo team downstairs, because they've had a lot of work to make up. The HCM team's working just as hard, but they're trying to get through things for sometimes the first time.
The payoff is the cutover. When you go over to the new, apply it, all this hard work hopefully is paid off, or you'll see it one way or another. So.
There's a lot of work to come in
Yeah,
the future, and I don't want people to think that just because we're able to hit a go-live date that the work stops. Trust me, a lot of departments are going to be working on this and fine-tuning it and fixing anything that didn't get through for many, many months.
Then there's training all the people that have to use it.
And we're going to be starting that next week. So we have one training that is the employee self-service, which deals with payroll and leaves. All 3,000 employees have to be trained on that. So that particular class and the number of classes, we're starting that actually next week. And then for about the next 2.5 months is a whole bunch of training and development work and efforts that are going to take place. So yes, the employees are really going to start seeing the different classes popping up and asking them to take it based upon their roles.
Well, the payoff's coming, and the pain will, this too will end. So,
I appreciate your positive attitude.
attaboys.
Mr. Peterson, then Mr. Dyson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I was going to say something along those same lines. They're getting to the point where they can almost see light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, and so, when the finish line is in view, sometimes you can find a little extra energy to sprint to the finish line.
Stay off
So
the home stretch.
maybe, hopefully that'll be the case.
They are doing everything they possibly can to try to hit the dates that have been targeted, I can tell you that.
And for you, it's been a stressful situation, and I'm sure you're looking forward to the end as well.
Yeah, she wants to go back to school district, I hear. It was quieter over there. Mr. Dyson, sir.
Yeah, this is Yogi Bear deja vu all over again. This similar conversation was happening in this room 30 years ago.
Something called PeopleSoft.
Anyways,
That was gonna solve
appreciate
all the
the report.
problems.
I have some sense of what pay attention to what you guys are doing. Is the contractor paid, earned pay for meeting milestones, or is it force account?
That's a good question. It's a time and materials contract. However, when we negotiated the contract, we negotiated holdbacks with this SAP. There are 3 milestones that they have to hit in order to be able to get that. The holdback was approximately, at that point in time, about 10% of the overall contract. It's about $1.5 million. There was a threshold on December 31st. There's a threshold that hasn't even come yet, and then the last threshold, which is the biggest amount, is go live. They don't get half the amount unless they go live. So, as you're well aware, our invoicing is months in the past, so they haven't even billed us for the holdbacks that they may even be eligible for. But there are thresholds that we put into the contract to try to ensure delivery of the system. Does that answer your question?
Oh, more than I wanted. It often happens, but I had another very question. I lost it.
Mr. Wilson, and back to Mr. Dyson.
Oh,
Mr.
yeah,
Dyson,
I
go
got it.
ahead.
Have we, the client, messed with the process and having add-ons that we wanted, or do things we didn't
Of course.
anticipate and have thrown into the change orders, if you will?
Well, we certainly have done our best to be able to minimize that. However, there are certainly things that are outside of our control. Some of the ones I continue to highlight are when the state changes the PERS reporting system, that required us to go in and make an appropriate change. And I will add this, since I'm in front of you right now, they mandated this change, we developed it, and yet they haven't got the systems yet to receive our files. So I'm trying to go up the line at the state, but we're getting close to going live, and they don't have the capability to receive our file electronically.
They requested it.
That's a concern that I have. But there's an example where there have been some, and as well as negotiating union contracts requires some changes as well. But we've attempted to mitigate it, but with a project this size, we have made some changes, but nothing of major.
Mr. Wilson, sir.
So looking at, and just an example, on page 18, you've got a bunch of tasks or reports or something. Some of these you said may not be tested before go live. So would they, so whoever's in charge of those reports, they'll just have to use SAP and figure out how to make it work, or do they keep using their spreadsheets?
So let's say on October 2nd we go live, and let's say that half these reports have not been tested at that point in time. My goal is to certainly have them ready in development, and then the consultants can do what's called functional unit testing, which means they would basically take their first pass. And once they've given their go-ahead, I'm hoping to have all of that work done before October 2nd. But what would not have happened is the departments would not have had an opportunity to be able to look at them and make sure that they're good. So they will not be in the go-live production environment at that point in time. So I'm sure once you go live, the first thing that people are going to do is try to address any critical problems that they're having just doing their regular jobs. But as soon as they're after, then we would have them go out in our test environment. We have 4 different environments. You don't test in your production environment. They would go out and they would do their roundup, so they're doing their regular job, but they would go out and test these reports, just like we're doing right now in a non-production environment. And once that validation was done, then they would pull those into the production environment, and then they would be available to be used by those departments and those employees at that point in time. But it could take days or weeks before they get to that, because they might be doing something a little bit more critical. Reports are not critical. I mean, they're nice to haves and so forth, and they're good to show information. And there's probably a couple in here that are even part of assembly requirements. That there's an SRM report in here that we're only doing because it's a part of your requirement. That's the year-end one that has everything under the sun in there. That may not be needed until January 1st, so there might be some time in there. But the scale is, if it's not done in SID testing and will not be put in at go live, then it'll be like in this waiting status out there for the staffs to be able to get to them after the go live time period.
So they keep using spreadsheets?
Well, the spreadsheets is to do the work. Right. These are the actual output. They just would not have a report output, and I guess if they had to deliver a report, they'd have to get the information out of the system and put it in a spreadsheet potentially to be able to report summary type information. But as I said, my goal here is to have these all at least ready so that it would not take that long afterwards to be able to get them into production. But you're correct. If you asked for a report on October 3rd that was one of these, the only way they'd be able to do is pull information out and put it in some kind of a format to be able to get it, because the formal pretty report would not necessarily be available at that time.
We're about 5 minutes left. Mr. Rivera, sir?
Oh, I didn't have it. I was just pointing to Mr. Constant.
Mr. Constant,
Just to
sir?
follow up on that question, that raises the boogeyman. So on the go-live date, we have all of these reports not yet ready. Is it internal staff that then can make that system amendment process work?
Yeah.
Or is this an extended contract with SAP for new development that's outside of the 5.9 million?
So right now, we have the contracts that we're looking at are up to go live. The original contract had 20 days of post-go live support that SAP was contracted to do. But once you're either outside of that, and we're even having some discussions whether post-go live support's included, the municipality will have the choice to pick from any vendor that they would like now and into the future to be able to do any modification to the system. On these, however, I think the learning curve for a new consultant coming in trying to deal with it is probably not as great as the potential cost of somebody who actually developed it and knew about it. So I would imagine, to the greatest degree possible, we'll try to keep the existing consultants who've developed them, designed them, work with our muni staff. But certainly, right now, the obligation is only for the 20 days of support, and then after that, we could go anywhere we wanted to do, not only these, but any other enhancements that we needed in the system in the future.
So these are then considered not part of the deliverable, even though they're identified as needed, they're considered something that may be bought later.
These actually are being delivered right now, but the system integration test portion of that will be at post go live.
Right.
So that part there will either have to be done through additional.
So it's not part of the 5.9 million we just approved.
I haven't approved it till this coming week.
Or
But,
we're
We approve it
past
Tuesday.
Okay, sorry.
but the development of these reports and the functional unit testing of them, which is done by these consultants, I am very confident, and this chart is showing, we are targeting all that work to be done before go live, so that work will be finished. But you are correct. If we get into a test of one of these reports afterwards and there's still a defect, you will have to pay to have that particular defect fixed, tweaked based upon that one. I will tell you, this is 29. We have 70 report. There's standard reports in SAP, plus we've already done another 50 that are already custom. So those are already done in the system and developed. These are just the additional ones that came up after the fact that were desired by the departments.
Mr. Dyson, then Mr. Steele.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. You partially answered my question. I infer from your comments that our contractor will be available in the out years to fix things that come up. You got a maintenance mechanic out there.
We have some existing contracts that were actually approved just before you became on the assembly. We have a contract for the actual environment, but we
You
also
can
have,
just say yes.
that's hard for me to do. We have existing contracts, and we can also go with other entities as well, should we choose to be able to do future changes to the system.
An issue in the past has been operating systems that become antiquated and obsolete, and nobody knows how, to keep going, and we're so slow that we don't update.
We currently have a contract in place with SAP for 2
You can
years
just
to
pack
be
it
able to do
downstairs
that.
and head it
Those
out.
enhancements.
Probably not enough, but I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Steele?
Reports, you're always going to have new needs for reports and stuff. Those are use of the system. So we're always going to have new reporting techniques. Somebody will come up with a bright idea and say, hey, we want something in a different format or something. So we have to have the skills to be able to do that over time. But I'm glad that you're looking at trying to get what our needs are in by go live.
And if the IT department has a resource, those can be done internally. If they don't have a resource, then there's consultants out there that they could choose to develop those things.
Good job on it. Thank you.
Anything else from Assembly members? If not, your packets are downstairs if you haven't got it yet for Tuesday's meeting. Kirk has them ready to go. The thing, I don't know if you saw yesterday on the news, but MMA fighting is pulling out of Sutherland Arena. They're going to UAA, so that's another one that's pulling out of the Sutherland Arena. So thanks so much for the resolution we passed. It requires administration to give us an update every quarter on plus or minus the Sutherland Arena.
Critical issue.
We've got to watch that thing like a hawk. Anyway, thanks for being here. This meeting's over. Thanks.